is Isabelle Leroux. I'm the president of the Alliance Française de Los Angeles, and I'm also a vice president of the Federation of the Alliance Françaises USA. Thank you so much for participating today into this event, amazing online exceptional book event organized by the Federation. So for those who don't know the Federation, maybe Melissa, you have another slide for me regarding our network. We are the largest Alliance Française network in the world, which means that the Federation regroups more than 100 chapters in the US only. We all share the same passion and the same mission for the French language and the French culture. Today also, I would like to present you the 3 upcoming events. We have one about history in June 11th, and we have 2 more, even 3 more in July 7, the jazz, and 2 more book events, July 19 and July 30. I would like to give you also some information in terms of logistics for the event today. So you will stay on mute during the presentation. Speaker view is better. You can put your question in the chat and we will select a few at the end of the interview if we still have time. If you have technical issues, please sign back and Melissa will accept you again in the Zoom. The event is recorded and the total time of this event is 1 hour. So we may be done for 11 a.m. Pacific time. So welcome, Alain Lefebvre. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation. Alain Lefebvre, author, former French diplomat, and you're here with us today for your book, Macron Unveiled. You will be interviewed by Florence Klein. Florence is very familiar with the Alliance network. You have been, you're a former board member of the Alliance Françaises de Los Angeles. You're co-founder, CEO, and host of Startup Vision TV. You worked as a foreign trade advisor. You worked as a journalist and anchor for France 3 National French Network, Bloomberg TV, France Television, and TF1 in France, and Télé France USA in New York. Thank you so much, both of you, for accepting your invitation and for this interview. Thank you. It's your turn now.
Thank you, Isabelle, for this intro, and thank you again, Alain, for being with us. So, quick intro. As Isabelle mentioned, you served as a diplomat, a senior civil servant. You now work as a strategy consultant for governments and companies, and also as a political coach. You live between Finland and France, and you are the author of 3 books about French and European politics. So we can say that you're a keen observer and a fine analyst of French politics. And I want to start with the big news because, you know, I mean, this interview would have been very different if Mr. Macron, President Macron, hadn't won the election. He was just re-elected as president of France with more than 58% of the votes against, once again, the far-right candidate, Marine Le Pen. And it could have been a very close call. And I want your thoughts on that as an introduction to your book, Macron Unveiled. Can you tell us your thoughts about that election?
So thank you very much for this presentation. I'm very happy to be here today, and I know already Alliance Française, so I'm happy to be with friends that I know about. About this election, it has been not a surprise, but before the second round of the election, we were just at the beginning of the second round campaign, we were not expecting Emmanuel Macron to have such an advance on Marine Le Pen. There have been different reasons for this evolution, because the first poll were giving to Macron 51-52%, and Marine Le Pen 48-49%. But there have been first element has been the fact that Marine Le Pen has not been very good at the campaign. She has been very surprised by Macron's approach, because before the second round, Macron has been accused of not making a campaign. So she was not expecting that on the first day, Macron would go immediately on to see people in the town. By the way, it was a town where the Front National was winning on the first round, So he has been immediately in contact with the people. It has been seen on television. It was very successful. So at 12 o'clock, she decided that she needs to go to meet people. And the first thing she did at this time was that she decided to see somebody in the countryside, and she went to see a farmer. It was raining and there was mud, and she had high heels. And the television has shown Macron, very relaxed, discussing with opponents, were attacking him, but he was replying, and there was a discussion. And then in front, there was Marine Le Pen, was in this city woman with high heels and this kind of, you know, how French people and French women can be dressed, on the countryside in front of a guy who not believing his eyes. So it has begun like that, and I could describe it, but it continued like that during the campaign. There was a debate in which she was looking tired and not as usual. Nobody knows why yet. There will be certainly some information coming later. And then the second reason is that the people have, during this second round campaign, French people have discovered the program of Marine Le Pen and the program of Macron. They didn't like so much Macron's program, and the majority of people were not really supporting Macron, but a lot of people voted for him because the program of Marine Le Pen was not something they liked at all. Even if there were social measures, there were also things which were clearly dangerous for the country, with a danger for the constitution and also a danger for the finance of the country. So people on the left who didn't want to vote Macron, when they saw that, they changed their mind and they voted for Macron. That explained that Macron was winning apparently easily. From my point of view, it was not so easy. I mean, just after the first round, it was not so easy. And the people on the left who have voted Macron were not planning to vote for Macron, a number of them. So it has been, I think it has been something very, very surprising. These 2 weeks have shown Macron, who was very tired because of Ukraine war. We have seen Macron very efficient, very involved, and I think he liked this. He liked campaigning anyway. So some politicians are better at campaigning than others. So it went well for Macron, but it doesn't mean that all the French people and the majority of French people support his program. So it may be something we will see. We'll talk about, because we will have new parliamentary election in June.
Yeah. So now I want to focus on something, that is on everybody's mind, which is the war in Ukraine. You say that Macron is an advocate for the return of a multilateral world order. Don't you think that the war in Ukraine, while strengthening the NATO alliance, is showing a very divided world between democratic countries and the other countries? And I'm thinking big countries, like India, China, or even the continent of Africa. They are not taking the side of democracies.
So there is certainly there have been a change in the world, and we went from a bipolar world with the West against the East, and now with the arrival of China on the ground and the power of China today, it has we have three main blocks. For Africa, I don't know exactly in which direction it will go. For the moment, Africa are not very involved in the questions which are important for Europe. It depends on the countries. There are countries who are supporting Putin. Not a lot of them, but a lot of them are very cautious. If you take even in Middle East, Palestinians, Israelis, Lebanese, everybody is a little cautious when they have to take sides. The problem is that their economy is depending a lot on the West, and Russia is also providing natural resources, etc. Also, China want to do business with everybody. So, and everybody is more or less depending on China. For this reason, there are a number of countries who are, I would say, neutral or sometimes declaring they support Moscow, but sometimes not declaring. On the side of Macron, he's on the side of diplomacy. Today there was a discussion. I mean, there was in the press in France there were discussions because Macron is speaking with Putin, and Zelensky, the Prime Minister of Ukraine, has declared that he should not talk with Putin. And it was a big surprise because every time Macron has spoken with Putin, he has first called Zelensky to agree on what he was going to say to Putin. Macron is somebody who is never, I mean, he has a tendency never to let go things. And when he has an objective, when he wants to do something, it's very difficult to stop him. For Ukraine, people around him have told him that he would not win any voters, he would not win anything by talking with Putin. But he has explained to his team and his diplomatic team that if nobody talks with Putin, the day when there will be, Putin will try to find a solution, he will be in difficulty, he will need to find a solution without losing his, saving the appearances. Somebody will need to have kept the contact with him to allow him, to give him some backdoor where he can escape in situation he was not expecting. Because in Ukraine, clearly, Putin was expecting a quick win. He was expecting Ukrainians not to fight. He was even expecting that people would come with flowers to say thank you to the Russians. And in fact, he got the opposite. And strong resistance. And also, we have seen in the last days, in some cases, the Russian army is more or less defeated. At least they have been pushed back in 2 or 3 places around Kharkiv yesterday. So from this point of view, it's very dangerous to put Putin in a corner and not let him any chance to discuss and find a solution where he would keep his dignity. So for this reason, I think that that's the reason why Macron has continued to discuss with Putin and continues to discuss with Putin. Even if he has even if he doesn't get any political benefit. But it has to do with the way Macron is seeing himself. He's seeing himself as some kind of, he has read a lot of history, he's read a lot of literature, and he sees himself as some kind of savior or some kind of hero, possible hero. And so he wants to, in this case, play a positive role for humanity. And it's something which is, it's a characteristic. It comes from his youth, it comes from his psychology, and it's not, I would say it's not what is making him win the elections, but it's something which is his personal characteristic.
So you answered my next question, which was about that, because you wrote in your book that, good, meaning us, versus evil, meaning them, is the antithesis of Macron's way of dealing with foreign states and leaders. He prefers consensus, compromise, and diplomacy over military responses. That's exactly what you just explained. So I want to switch to Finland. You live in Finland, so you can tell us what's going on and what the outcome will be. You know, Finland is ready to integrate NATO, to ask to enter the NATO alliance. We already saw, some feedback from Russia that cut the electricity feed for them. So what's your thoughts about that? I mean, you're an insider into that. Tell us about it. Same thing for Sweden, which is supposed to follow.
Yeah, Finland and Sweden also. I know I have lived in Sweden. So Finland has a special history with Russia because during the war, they were first fighting against Russia because Russia was allied with Germany, and Germany and Russia had agreed that Finland would be under Russia command. And what happened with Finland, between Russia and Finland, is exactly what happens now with Ukraine. They attacked, and Finland was making 400,000 Russian prisoners they were killing something like 130,000 Russians. They lost only 15,000 or 20,000 people. So after the war, after that, Finland got allied with Germany because Russia was still threatening and Russia was going against Germany. So Finland was joining Germany. So at the end, Finland was losing and Finland was put by the Allies under Russia influence, in the Russian zone influence. I mean, neutral, not in NATO, and they had to pay a lot to Russia. So now, since the war, everybody in Finland was saying, if you don't want a new war, we have to be neutral, totally neutral, not in NATO. There was a change with European Union because in European Union, there is a clause for common defense. I mean, for when a country of EU is attacked, there would be the other country is supposed to help the country which is under attack. In the case of Finland now, with the attack on Ukraine, they have thought that they are in danger because the biggest border in the EU with Russia is near Finland. There is 1,300 kilometers. For this reason, when they saw what Russia has done with Ukraine, they were very afraid that Russia would come. So they were, about NATO, they were like 20% in favor of going NATO, 80% or say 70% against. And it has totally changed. Now we have in Finland 80% of people who want to join NATO. All the political parties want to join NATO in order to protect Finland. Russia, you know that they have attacked Ukraine because they have considered that Ukraine being a neighbor of Russia should stay neutral and should not go in NATO. And what they are seeing is that Finland, who is still also another neighbor of Russia, is going in NATO. So they have taken some measures. For the moment, it's mainly cyber attacks, like, for example, difficult to access my bank account certain days. They have cut the electricity, they have cut the gas. Finland is partly depending on Russian electricity and gas, but it's organized in order. We have been asked if we are warming the house with gas, we have been asked to have a stove, to buy stoves and to buy wood in order to be ready next winter to face a cut in gas because it's difficult to find alternative solutions. So Finland is clearly going to ask to go into NATO, and now the situation is still worse because in NATO, Erdogan, Turkish president, has said he will vote against Finland going inside NATO. So Finland is in a very difficult position because they have asked to go into NATO, which makes Russia very unhappy. But they may be not going into NATO fast, at least, which means that in the meantime, they are under threat of Russia. So we are in this situation. I'm not too much worried because the Russian army is in Ukraine. They are like the Russian army, a permanent army is 250,000 soldiers. And after that, they can call for conscripts. But Finland army is 230,000 soldiers, 230,000 soldiers permanent. I mean, they can be mobilized in 10 days. And then there is 1 million other people who are ready to come in some months. I mean, they are trained. In Finland, there is a very strong army training for everybody. There is a big reserve. And so I think the Finnish army would be too big a problem for Russia. But it's really a difficulty. And it adds to the problem between NATO and Russia because Russia has said the US has put pressure on Finland and on Sweden for them to join NATO. And it's again bad Americans who are prepared, who have made this push Finland and Sweden. So here we are going to see what happens in the next months. Problem is that young people were not caring at all until now. The people are really afraid. I think there is a global, I'm working in the field of public health also. I think there is a global mental health problem which has to be dealt with in in Finland. Our children we have in Finland are very, very afraid, and they were without. There have been the COVID, which has not made the situation good, and now there is this threat. So this is something to be considered.
Yeah. I just want to close that chapter on international relations with China that you just spoke about. You said that besides best Macron is his pragmatism, and it's well illustrated in his attitude towards China. When the US are in a confrontation, France and Germany have another approach, more inclusive and pragmatic, given the fact that Europe and China are essential trading partners.
Yes, in the beginning of his after his election in 2017, Emmanuel Macron went almost immediately to China, and he was trying to develop this relation. He has been there 2 times a year, 3 times a year, which is he stays some days. It has not been the case for previous presidents, and he has tried to develop a relation with Xi, with the Chinese president. But and he has asked that China consider Europe as a partner, and China let the European companies operate in China with less restrictions, and in exchange that Europe should be welcoming China. And he was not. He didn't have the same position as the US considering considering China. He's not considering China as a threat for Europe, just a partner who has to be more fair. The problem is that it didn't work, and Macron is very has a tendency to be very pragmatic. When he saw that, decided to change his mind, and with Europe, he has proposed that Europe should be less dependent from China. So they have developed policies, they have developed rules which are in some way making Europe more independent. So developing production of the chemical products which are precursors of pharmaceutical, for example, because even for paracetamol, I mean, Europe was totally depending on China. There was no production in the EU. So what he has done, in Europe, he has pushed for defining strategic domains like pharmacy, but other domains in which Europe should be self-sufficient and would not need China. China began to fear. In addition, he has said that if China is continuing to block European products in China, in this case, Europe should take the same measure in Europe, a little like the American positions. So it's very characteristic of Macron. He tries to be nice and friendly. It happened also with Turkey at some moment. And then if it doesn't work, he can be very strong and very hard in the discussion. And he has pushed Europe now to be more in confrontation with China, at least less dependent from China, and more this kind of person. He can negotiate better now with China. So I think there has been an evolution in the Chinese position also when they have seen the US and Europe are practically on the same position, except that Europe doesn't consider China as a military threat or anything of this type, at least for the moment. But when you consider that Macron is pushing for Europe to strengthen its defense, I think there is also the possibility that it is a link with China, because France has a lot of territory outside Europe, and some of them are not far from the zone of influence of China. And China has already tried several times to put a hand on French territories in the region, particularly in New Caledonia, which is a place where they are producing aluminium, I think.
So now let's shift to the personality of Emmanuel Macron. You're also a psychologist, and it shows in your approach and practice, which is very different from a normal, let's say, book about politics. you watch him, you analyze his moves, his thoughts, his alliances. And first of all, I would like to ask you, why did you write this book? Do you know him? Why did you write this book?
No, I don't. I don't know Emmanuel Macron, and probably, you know, when people who meet him, they are very seduced by him. And if I had met him, I suppose I would have been seduced, and I would have written a very different book. No, I wanted this president, this man was looking for me. It was some kind. No, it's very difficult to go inside and to speak with him and to know really what he thinks. There is only one person, his wife, who can know, who could answer the question of who is Emmanuel Macron. So I have tried to analyze what he has done, how it went, to see what kind of person he is. And for me, it was like a puzzle, you know, when you have somebody is exceptional by certain elements, is also hated a lot by people in France. So at some moment, at least, it has been like that. He has faced crisis. He has made big mistakes, but he was at the end. He was able to correct. So
why, Alain, did you decide to write this book? This is what I would like to know. One morning you wake up and you say, "I'm gonna," why? What was the motivation? You live abroad. I mean, why?
Yeah, certainly because. My wife would tell you that it's because I'm sharing some common elements with Macron. I am not from Paris. I'm from the countryside. I'm from outside Paris, which is very important in France, what we call province. I have read a lot when I was a child, and I think it has changed me a lot. And he has read a lot when he was a child. He was living in some kind of, I suppose he was living like me, some kind of imaginary world. He was, we have made the same studies, I would say, what is called École Nationale d'Administration. So I had I was very curious to know this guy who was little, having the same background as I have, but and then also there was something, it's like I was very puzzled, surprised by what was said about him, because some people love him totally, some people hate him totally. So it was like, when you write about a crime, you want to know who is guilty. And here, I wanted to know exactly who this guy was. And he's the president. I mean, it's important to know that. And I've seen books where admiring him, books where I've read all the books in French, at least, even in English. People loved him, write a book because they love him, or people write a book because they hate him, or because there have been philosophs, etc., writing about him. But I don't think any book has really looked at him from distance. And being in Finland also, there is a distance.
Yeah, but I understand what you're saying, and it's very interesting because when you speak about him, you speak about him with both admiration and criticism. And like you describe in your book, Emmanuel Macron, what you said, knows he's into seduction. You speak about his charisma, his charm, his empathy. He provokes a sort of fascination with everyone, as you say, bad or good. This even works with heads of states like Putin, who was really into it when he came to Paris. It was his first state visit as a new president in France. He invited Putin. It worked with Orban, Trump, and others. And you also speak about this Machiavellian side that some people see in him, or inexperience that you can see in him, and the shapes shifter. So tell us about him. Who do you think he is? All of that, of course, but even more.
Yes, he's first, he was a beginner in politics when he became president. He has been minister some months, but he was really a beginner, and that explains why he has made big mistakes. So This is one element that people are totally forgetting. I have a chapter where I speak about The Apprentice, but I refer to the TV show in US. It could have been put out after some weeks. There have been the Yellow Jacket, people who have been big protests, and he began with mistakes. He has decreased support to students at the moment where students were becoming poorer, and it was a problem. He has done on the COVID. He has taken in the beginning. He has blindly followed some scientists which were giving advice which are not taking into account the French economy, etc. So in a lot of steps, he has made mistakes. And then there have been one of the people around him, very close to him, was bodyguard and then head of the French service in charge of protecting the president. And this guy has been doing something really bad, and now he has been put in prison, etc. And Macron has partly protected him in the beginning. It would have been in the US, I think that there would have been at least some attempt to create some impeachment procedure. But Macron is also very lucky because in all this case, he has been able to change his behavior, to change his position, and to explain to the people what he was doing and correct his mistakes. So
is this luck or is this intelligence?
he was not. Yeah, it's intelligent. He has an intelligence, but we didn't know that when we elected him. But there is a good intelligence of the situation, but it takes some time because he's losing. It's somebody who is going from a family where his father was in hospital, was doctor, professor even, I think. So he comes from a family which is he has never had the problems. He never had the problem to find a house, to pay for the rent, or to pay for the food, and French people feel it. Other politicians are able to not to show that, even if they are richer than he is. Among the candidates for the French election, at least in 2000, even now, he was not the richest. He was probably the poorest, even if you include the people on the left and on the right side, and extreme right. Marine Le Pen is relatively rich compared to him, the candidate. So even with this, he gives the impression of a guy who has no worries, no practical worries. So he's not like the French people, which is one element of the feeling that some people hate him because of that. He's too far away from their preoccupation. His wife is different and gives the impression she knows what is the price of bread in France, but he gives the impression that he has a head in the clouds, and it's her who is sometimes putting him down. So he made mistakes probably because of this, but then after that, he discusses with people. He's able to go to speak with people. He's able to look and he realizes, and then he corrects. For the Yellow Jacket, it has been very typical. It took him 2 months to begin to correct it and 4 months to really take an initiative, which has given the impression that at least he has tried to address the problem. It's not finished from my point of view. We could see in September other problems in France, but at least he has tried. So he's able to, if he's in difficult situation, I expect that he's able to go out of it, which is not bad for a president.
Yeah.
You know when about luck, when Napoleon was French emperor was selecting generals, first question he was asking, is a guy lucky? Because he said, I don't want a general who is very good general, but very unlucky. I want people lucky. Lucky, it means that you are able to read the situation, and you are able to, in any situation, to find a way to manage, because to be ready to take your chance, to be luck is not coming to everybody, and Macron is kind of person.
Okay, so you spoke about Brigitte, and I would like to speak about Brigitte. What is fascinating for all of us is seeing this complementarity and incredible bond between Brigitte and Emmanuel. we can speak, like we say in the United States, about a power couple, and we see their fascinating relationship. Can you talk about that, please?
Yeah, sure. When they have met, he was 14 and she was 24 years, more than 20 years older. And he was in love, and I think she was in love also. And they had a relation when he was 15 or 16, which could have been a serious problem, including a legal problem at the time in France. But they were managing. And when he was 15, he told her, "I will marry you. I'm going now to Paris to study, but I'm going to marry you." And it happened. So it shows that, and they have had to face a lot of difficulties together. Again, in some ways, they were like against the world. And she was married, she had children. So some of her children were in the same class as Emmanuel Macron. So it was really a situation which was not, at the time, I remember people were not accepting this kind of stories easily, but it went. And they had a lot of difficulties. They married a long time after that, but it has kept the couple very together. I mean, it's already like a fusion. And it's true that he could not be president if she didn't want him to become president, and she was not happy when he was elected. Last time, if I look at the film, when he was elected for a second time, she was crying, and she was not crying of happiness, etc. She was crying because she knew that he'd have difficult years in front of them. So they leave everything together. Also, in all the difficulties, he has realized that people around him, they all try to take advantage. They have always some personal objective when they support him. And Brigitte is the only one he can speak with, he can talk to about what his problems. And in the evening, they are trying to be together every evening. They communicate by message and by phone 3, 4, 5 times a day. He calls her. He has a special telephone for her that when she calls, he is always there. And she's also the only one who can, telling him that he's making a big mistake and telling him stop doing this and that. There are some stories in my book about. There is a case when I spoke about the scandal with somebody. His bodyguard was been beating people and went to prison for this reason. Later, he was supporting him until one day we know that. She was shouting to him, telling him, "Stop your bullshit. Now it should be finished, or you leave and you are no more president." So I don't want that you continue like that. Either you take a strong decision about this guy, you stop supporting him, or you stop being president. Even if he's a friend, you have to let him go. And it was told that the discussion was so high level that everybody was hearing it around. When the bodyguards around have spoken about it and say through the door, they were hearing they were hearing what they say through the door. The door in Élysée Palace, I have been there, they are quite thick. So she's probably the only one able to say to him that you are making an enormous mistake and you should stop it. And in a number of cases, I'm sure that she has been this kind of, like we say in France, Jiminy Cricket, conscience also, and social conscience. She's from right side, but she has also a practical mind, so it helps. I think they are very complementary people.
It shows, yeah, definitely. So I would like to go into what he did during his first mandate. And I think personally that one of his main accomplishments has been to put back France into the game of innovation leadership. Once admired for its successes in technology like Concorde, nuclear energy, and research, France was becoming less daring, less inventive. And Macron, we can say, took France into the 21st century.
Yeah, in some way, yes, it's true that he's younger. He's an admirer of new technologies. He has welcomed all the CEOs of big companies in the world. normally we have a palace. We in France, we have a place called Versailles Palace. So in Versailles, it's a place where presidents are receiving other head of states. So Vladimir Putin was invited there. And Macron is the first one who has invited CEOs of big companies in the world from Asia, from Africa, Asia, US, etc., and quite regularly. So he has been a very good chief of French marketing in this domain. He has also changed laws about employment, etc., to make it easier life for employers, with the idea that there is more flexibility, there is more attraction for foreign investors, which is the case, by the way. France is creating now more companies than Germany or any other EU country. And even more than UK, more attractive. It made an attractive country. It has, so yes, he has made France, and the France economy is in good shape now, and inflation is half of the average of the EU, so it's not bad. Because it's mainly because France has nuclear energy mainly, and is not depending on oil or gas. So which is expensive and is a problem in Finland, for example. But this has a downside, because when he has given more flexibility to companies, he has also made more difficult for people. I mean, it's a matter of until now, employees in France were feeling protected. Now with this new policy, they're feeling less protected, and this he has tried to correct, but it's not something that people are forgetting in France, and it's one of the reasons why people are a lot of people on the left are not happy about him, and this is why there is still a possibility that the left is winning the parliamentary election in June, because French people are not used to the way Macron is thinking from this point of view, and is very linked. He's very linked. He has worked in a bank, in investment bank, which is again not something very social. So people want now that he takes a social and environmental position, and he stops continuing on the way he was going until now, giving a big advantage to private companies in particular. That's why I'm expecting that he will choose a prime minister. Normally it's Monday or Tuesday. He will choose a prime minister from the left, or at least somebody who has been in the Socialist Party, and a woman, certainly.
Okay, so I had so many more questions, but time flies. I want to ask you a last question before we go to the questions in the audience. Your subtitle on your book, you wrote, Emmanuel Macron is the prototype for a new generation of world leaders. What do you mean?
Yeah, I mean that until now, you have in each country, you have people who are either left or right, or Democrats or Republicans, or in UK, Labour Party or Conservative. Macron is not, I mean, and each party has some stability in the way they think, and some stability in the way they consider the economy, they will consider social affairs, health, or whatever. You see that in the US. Macron is able to change his mind, is extremely flexible. So for this reason, it's at the same time, it's a good thing and a bad thing. Because it's a good thing because now things go very fast. And when you are head of a company or you are president of a country, suddenly everything changes. Suddenly you have the COVID, and you have to change you have to change your mind. You have to find new things. You have to be creative. Then it's good to be flexible. At the same time, people are a little lost when you have a president who one day decides to, let's say, to cut in the public expenses. Macron did it during 2 years. And then suddenly there was the COVID, and he was distributing money like nobody has ever done in France. Or in the rest of compared to the rest of the world, he has given a lot of money. And so he has said, whatever it costs, we will pay. And the state has paid a lot. And there is a big, France has a big debt now. So it's very difficult to classify this guy. And for this reason, you elect somebody and you never know what he's going to do. This is something, it creates some anxiety compared to traditional politics.
Yeah, but on the other hand, it can be beneficial to the country to adapt to the situation, and that's what I understood when you say a new generation of world leaders, because you have to adapt because the world moves so fast, and this is a quality, in fact.
Yeah, generally yes, because you have to react fast and you have to not be too much ideological. When the crisis in 1929, the crisis in 1929 began in the US, it took like 6 months, 1 year to arrive in Europe. Now, when the subprime crisis arrived in 2 weeks, it was in Europe. And then you have to react fast. And it's true that some traditional leaders have had difficulty. In this way, it's a change of generation. I think he's showing a change of generation. What I don't know if it is good or if it is bad. I think it's quite good in certain situations, and other situations, people need some stability. So, imagine in the US, a president who is not a Democrat and not a Republican arriving and doing whatever he thinks is good, but you don't know. When you elect somebody, you expect that they are doing things that way or this way. So that's why the French politics have exploded. The right side got what usually like 20-30% of the vote, got 4%. The left side got more, but the traditional party in the left side, Socialist Party, got also 3 or 4%. It has never happened before. And the extreme right has developed a lot. So what can be said about Macron is that, is it because of him that the extreme right has developed? Because people voting for the extreme right are not these extremists or whatever. They are just people who want to go back to the past where France was, things were clear and France was stable and so-called happy, which was not the case, by the way. So there is some kind of tendency to want to go back to old times. And with a leader like this, personally, I think it's positive for the country, but it's not for the mind of people, mental health, I would say, it's not necessarily very good.
Okay, thank you so much for all this, and this is a great book you wrote, very interesting. And now let's see what are the questions, Isabelle and Melissa.
Yes, there is one question. Anna, what is Macron's education? So it means he's diplomat, and does he speak multiple languages?
On the languages, he speaks English, certainly, and French. And I don't think he speaks a lot of other languages. But his education, he has first studied philosophy. He has made at least a master in philosophy, and it was about Machiavelli. So it has been something that people have kept against him, that because Machiavellianism, it's not very positive for people. But he has written a thesis. He has also been interested in philosophy, and he has worked with a French philosopher as some kind of secretary of the philosopher, Paul Ricoeur, famous philosopher, and so he has a good knowledge of philosophy, at least. And then he has studied in a French National School of Administration, which is where all the senior civil servants in France are going to learn, and a part of them become politicians. So among the French president, François Hollande was from this école ENA, called École Nationale d'Administration, Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, Jacques Chirac. So more than half of our presidents come from this school. In this place, you learn mainly to deal with, I don't know, it's not the same word in English, but the state affairs, let's say, management of state affairs, not public affairs in the American meaning. So he has quite a high-level education, yeah, because he has been at university, and then he has been, and he was planning at some moment to become a writer. before going in the bank and becoming investment banker.
Okay. There is another one, and also comment and question. Macron seems to be president of the riches and the elites. He switches to the right now. Did the French vote for him because Macron was a better choice for France and for the world than Marine Le Pen?
But definitely, because I don't know what would have happened if he had been opposed to another candidate. But the problem is that all the other candidates, none of them were looking presidential or behaving like presidents. The fact that the other candidates were making lame campaigns, and they were not lucky also because he was elected also because of Ukraine. Because, you know, when a country is not at war, but at war or linked to the war, the president or the head of state becomes very popular. For example, when Margaret Thatcher was in power, there was a war with Argentina, and her popularity went from 30-20% to 60 or 70% in 3 weeks. And the same happened with Macron. So people are thinking, okay, we choose a president, we may have a war. Which person is going to be the best for in this case? Which was the experience, because he has been president. Nobody had a lot of experience. Marine Le Pen has never been even minister. Mélenchon has been minister, the leader of the left, but he is a little extremist. And in addition, the other reason is that the 3 people who could have threatened him, Marine Le Pen, Éric Zemmour, and Mélenchon, so 2 extreme right, 1 on the left, not extreme left, but very on the left. The 3 of them were supporters of Putin in January until the invasion of Ukraine. So this was very difficult for people to vote for people who were supporting Putin in the previous months, I think. So
okay.
He was lucky.
Very quickly, you said that he did École Nationale d'Administration, l'ENA. Why did Macron decided to close that school that he attended?
He has not closed his school, he has transformed it in a school. The problem of this school is that it's a school for elite, but it's a school of elite, because there is a reproduction, you know, children of people who have been in ENA go to ENA, etc. I went to ENA, but I didn't know about ENA until I was like 20. But these people are in this. So he wants to democratize the recruitment of this school and make it more open to other classes, which is okay from my point of view.
A question regarding immigration. Will this immigration problem continue to be in the electoral debate, and why is it so focused on immigration?
I mean, there are 2 problems. There are real problems. Like it's not a problem of immigration, but the problem that there have been in the French mosques, there have been imams who are extremists, Islamists, and there have been a tendency in France, religious people preaching in some mosque, in a big part of the mosque, are paid by Turkey and Morocco, and are trained in Turkey and Morocco, and there is a little control on what they say, and sometimes they are going against the state in France. This is a real problem, and Macron has addressed it, but will not find a solution in the short term. The other problem is that we have extreme right, which is stressing the question of immigration. I mean, we always have had immigration in France. Let's say that it's not a new problem, but it's a reason why France has a population which is not decreasing like in Germany, Italy, etc. So we live with it, we have lived with it, but the extreme right is putting a problem. And when you look where people have voted for Marine Le Pen, you find the East, like Alsace, where there is practically no immigrants. So there are a lot of places like on the east of France where there is no, or the center of France, where people have voted for Marine Le Pen. They are fearing immigration, but they don't have really immigrants. Okay, there are other regions, and in the West we have a lot of places where there are a lot of immigrants. Where I have my house in France, there are quite a lot of immigrants, people who didn't vote for Marine Le Pen. So, I mean, there is some kind of, for people who don't know immigration, there is some kind of idea that immigration is a threat French people are going to be replaced by Muslim people coming from North Africa, etc., which is something that I think the right has invented in some way.
Okay, so two more questions, but which could be one question and the last question regarding the next president election in 5 years, but in between there is a question saying, what about Mélenchon as prime minister? And finally, it's linked to what happened in the months with les législatives. We are back to election in France. Do you think President Macron could be ready for what we call in France la cohabitation? Because it's going to be maybe difficult for him to get a new majority.
I think he will not. He may not get a new majority, but Mélenchon has no chance to have a majority. And Macron is the one choosing the prime minister. He can choose the prime minister on the left, who could be an ally of Mélenchon now, and who could come as prime minister. And because Mélenchon now think he will be chosen as prime minister because he's allied with 3 other political forces. And the 3 other political forces, at least 2 of them are very moderate, the Greens and Socialist Party. And if Macron is put in minority, he can choose among these people somebody to become prime minister and let them do a left side policy, but marginalized Mélenchon will not have a majority alone with his own political party. And the second thing is that the president in France has a special right. I mean, you don't have this in the US, but the French president is able to dissolve the National Assembly and call for new election after 1 year, after the last vote. So it means that even if Macron doesn't have majority, if things go, he can choose a left side person who will certainly not be Mélenchon, and then he can, if it doesn't work, he will make new election, and he can hope that the majority will change. Because the fact of being in power for the left is not an easy thing now in France. But I don't believe the left will have a majority. I think there will be some balance, and Macron will be allied with right side people, will be allied with some left side people, and he will find a majority. But it's my personal idea.
Okay. So it's almost 11 a.m. We're right on time. Thank you so much, Florence and Alain, for this amazing and interesting talk. So up to date regarding what happened in the world and in France. You will find in the chat the links to buy the book of Alain, Macron Unveiled. So Florence, do you want to say a word to conclude?
Can you give the floor to? Can you give the floor to Florence? Okay. No. She cannot.
Florence is mute. So Alain, thank you so much. It was really a pleasure to have you. Florence, you're back.
Yes, sorry, I couldn't unmute. You had to allow me to unmute. It's very complicated. That's the joy of Zoom. But as you said, it allows us to be all together around the world. I think it's a fascinating book, really, because as Alain mentioned a little bit, he doesn't take sides. He's like an observer, and Macron is quite fascinating because he has so many faces in his personality. And I think what is his main trait is to be a young president, a new generation president. And that's what is very, very interesting. Read the book. I had a lot of, I learned a lot of things, and it's a good analysis about the world and France and Europe. Thank you, Florence. Thank you, Alain.
Thank you very much. And there is a special prize for people from Alliance Françaises.
Absolutely.
By the publisher.
And yes, absolutely. Sorry.
Yeah, I just say that I'm sorry, I was not able to answer all the questions, but I go sometime in the US, and we can discuss it when I come next time.
Absolutely, it will be our pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. And I invite you to check our website and our upcoming events of the Federation Alliance Françaises USA. Have a wonderful Saturday. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.